Hello, this is Jazz from Spa Speakers. Another tutorial video for the incoming committee. This video is for the treasurer, and the focus of the video is preparing the month-end accounts. So what I want to do in this video is just give you a quick overview of the Dropbox folder where all the account data is stored for the Spa Speakers accounts, and explain the rationale behind the file structure. That'll be the first step, and the second step is to go through the month-end accounts preparation process. So just to understand, just to give you some context, at the end of each month the treasurer will get the Spa Speakers account current. That means pay off all the invoices, make sure any dues or fees or money coming in are paid before the end of the month. Any expenses that need to be reimbursed back to officers who've incurred expenses on behalf of the club, those are all processed. And then essentially undertake a download of the bank statement from the club bank account, and then use that raw data to generate a financial report for the month. Once that report is created, this should be shared with the rest of the committee at the upcoming committee meeting to give everybody a picture of where the club is in terms of how much fees are coming in, what the expense situation is, whether we're in budget or outside of budget, you know, all the kind of usual things, because we've got to make sure that in an environment where we have a constrained amount of income, we stay within budget. It's a really important role, and it's also really important because the treasurer really is key to ensuring that we spend the money that we get in dues, members' dues, in a responsible way that's in the best interests of the club's membership. It's a really important role, and yeah, let's just go through it right now. So this is when you've got access to Dropbox. So the first thing, of course, is that you need to get access to Dropbox. Once you've got it, this is what the folder structure will look like on your PC. So then there's a folder dedicated to the treasurer folder. So if I open that up, the first three folders you'll see, there's an archive, there's some guidance notes, and then there's this year's accounts. So the archive contains a record of the previous year's accounts. This, once the end of the year has been reached, will be moved into the archive, and a new folder will be created for the next year, and the process continues on. If I go then into this folder, there are quite a few folders, so I just want to explain the logic behind that. The club accounts contains our club accounts. So once all the data has been compiled relating to the expenses that were made and the invoices that were paid and the monies that we've collected, these will then be input into this particular spreadsheet to generate a report that gives us a sense of where we are. So this is really, really important. I'm not going to open it up yet, just want to let you know that it exists and where it exists. Invoices to pay. This is a folder where, when we receive invoices that we have yet to pay, for example, we may get an invoice to pay rent, but we may not necessarily pay that rent immediately. Should that happen, that invoice should be immediately saved into this folder. Ideally, everything that we get as a club should be in electronic format. We don't want any paper because it just confuses things and complicates things, and it just gives the next treasurer a bit of a headache because then they'll have this big folder full of paperwork which they'll have to find somewhere to store. And since we as a club need to store 7 years worth of financial data, that's a lot of data. So if we can get it all electronic, that's really, really a huge help, and it just makes sure that our accounts are complete. So when we get our invoice that we haven't yet paid, we'll move it into this folder. When we get round to paying it, we move it into this folder, which is our invoices paid. The reason why we don't just have one folder, which is invoices, is it just simplifies it just removes the cognitive effort required to figure out, oh, have I paid that invoice or not? You know, if you haven't paid it, it's in invoices to pay. Once you paid it, it goes into invoices paid. Easy enough. We also keep our receipts. So for some things, for example, if we're purchasing something from Amazon, then we're not necessarily going to be invoiced. We're just going to get a receipt, a record, to demonstrate that we've actually purchased something. In that case, that also goes into invoices paid. Expenses receipt. Sometimes we don't make payments, we don't buy things for the club directly with the club debit card or through a bank transfer. We can sometimes have club officers incur expenses on behalf of the club, and then we would need to reimburse them. If we are to reimburse them, we need to make sure that they provide a receipt, and we need to make sure that that receipt's in good condition and it's scanned in a way that's legible, and this is the place where those receipts are kept. So keeping the receipts is one thing, but we also need to have an effective way of logging those transactions, and this is where the expenses management spreadsheet comes in. So if you go into 3 expenses management, there is a spreadsheet called Expense Reimbursement Manager. If I open this up, you'll see that this manager has a date, a claimant, a description of the expense, a category, the amount, a flag to say has a receipt been received on Dropbox, and if it hasn't, then we need to have an explanation as to why, because we shouldn't be reimbursing expenses unless we've got a receipt, or if there's a very good reason why there isn't a receipt. And then authorization sought. So whenever an expense is incurred, we need to authorize that it's to be reimbursed. It's a reimbursable expense with the president. That's to stop people from basically purchasing any old thing using the club accounts, which aren't relevant to club business or are outside of the rules which are in place as to how club funds can be used. If the authorization has been sought and has been given, a reimbursement date will be scheduled. Some treasurers may want to reimburse it immediately after authorization has been given, or alternatively they may want to wait till the end of the month and do them all in one big go. And then once it's done, you hit yes. There's a funds where the funds are reimbursed from. So in the past we had a petty cash account and we could reimburse expenses via direct cash payments, but we've completely eliminated that now. As of October of the year of October 2017, we no longer have a petty cash account. All expenses are to be reimbursed via the bank account. This is to ensure that we have accurate records, we don't have any kind of risk of misuse of funds and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's just really important that we run everything off the bank account, and we have done, and it works perfectly fine. Don't be tempted to go back to a petty cash system. It's a lot better to work it off the bank account. And then finally, we've got a receipt file name generator. So when we have these receipts, you know, there is a temptation that you just store it and it has some completely incomprehensible file name which is not very easy to audit. And we need to have auditable accounts to ensure that we know where we are. If they haven't given a good file name, then it's going to be very hard to undertake any kind of validation. So this formula has been written. It takes the inputs from the other fields in the express reimbursement calculator and generates a preferred file name. So the way that you would use it is go to the file name, click copy. So right click the cell with the file name, hit copy, and just to illustrate the point, I'm going to open a untitled notepad and I'm going to save it as. I'm going to just paste what I've just copied, and you'll see that that file name has come up. So the formula hasn't come up, it's actually the content of that file name that has come up. And then you would hit save, and then we'll have actually a decent file name. So please use that file name generator to generate your file names. Okay, so that is the expense reimbursement manager. Right, so what else is in this folder structure? Club budget. So we have a finite amount of dues, renewal fees that we get from members. So that's our income. And then we've also got to pay rent. We've got to pay TMI, their membership dues. So when we collect, the £57, a considerable amount of that goes straight to the Toastmasters International Organisation. $45, in fact, of our £57 goes there. The remainder of those fees are then used towards rent, used towards our web expenses, and there are bank charges that are generated by our bank, so forex fees and transaction fees. So those are kind of like absolutely things that we cannot avoid. We have to pay those. The difference between our income and those mandatory costs, those mandatory expenses, is what we would describe as being our discretionary budget. And with those remaining funds, we will do things like hold training events, or buy paper, pens, clipboards, assets, things that make the club experience better, spoons, all sorts of things, and badges. Badges is a big one. The badges that we have for new members, that kind of forms part of our discretionary budget. So the club budget helps us to ensure that we will spend within our means. It's really important that we set a robust club budget at the very beginning of the year, and we maintain good financial discipline, that we stay within those budgetary constraints. So by the end of the year, we haven't spent more than we have earned in income. Okay, I won't go into the budget process for the time being. Renewal management. So we have these two renewal periods. Biannually, we'll ask all of our members to pay a 6 month forward view of their fees, so they can maintain their membership. In this folder, spreadsheets have been created by previous treasurers just to help manage and track that process. There's no kind of hard and fast rules as to how you go about doing that, so it's really up to you. The important thing is that you know who you've asked to pay, you know who has paid, and you know who you need to chase again. So by the time the end of the renewal period is completed, everybody who wants to continue on as a member has paid, and the individuals who have told you, look, I'm not going to renew, I'm not going to continue my membership, so you don't go ahead and keep chasing those individuals. So yeah, do that the way that you feel is best, but there's some templates here to kind of give you guidance as to how you might want to do it when it's your turn to play that role. Members' invoice requests. Sometimes members, when they pay their 6 month dues, they don't want to pay it out their personal accounts. They want to expense it to their personal company or expense it to their employer. To do that, we need to send an invoice for those membership fees. And you'll find there is a template for just such an invoice stored in this folder. And there's also a record of invoices that have been requested by prior members. So we just kind of track that process as well. We've got records for that. Dues refund log, number 7. Occasionally, what can happen is that members double pay their dues, and therefore we need to issue a refund for one of their double pays, or a direct debit goes wrong and the direct debit pays after the member has left the club, in which case that we need to then refund those dues. And this is essentially a folder where we just track the process. So if there's a refund that we need to do, a refund pending, we'll just make a record of that in this folder here, and once it's paid, we'll then move it into refund complete. And so you can see, because that's not empty, that we've had to do that a few times this year. So that's where you would keep a record and keep an eye on what's going on there. Lloyd's data downloads. Once you've made the club accounts current at the end of the month, so you've paid the invoices and all the income's come in and you've reimbursed all the expenses, after the month has ended, you can then go ahead and download the bank transactions from our bank account. And that raw data that we download, we'll use to prepare our month-end accounts. The raw data is stored here. And you can see we get this Microsoft Excel CSV file from our bank account. It's really, really handy to store those all in one place. and use it to prepare our accounts. Assets log. So the Treasurer and the Sergeant at Arms have a shared responsibility in maintaining, keeping an eye on our assets. You'll notice that all that we've got here is a README saying please see SSA folder. That's because I don't want to create 2 copies of the asset log. So very quickly I'm going to show you where the asset log is stored, which is the Sergeant at Arms folder. Just open it up and you'll see here there is a list of all the things that belong to the club with an estimated financial value if we wanted to replace it. And you can see there's lots and lots of stuff that we own, and it logs where it's stored, who's responsible for it, what the condition is, and we want to make sure that nothing gets lost or goes missing, because if it does, we'll have to buy it again. And if we have to buy it again, we have to use club funds, and club funds are scarce. We shouldn't be spending more than we need to, so we've got to maintain that good financial discipline. We need to keep track of our assets. So work with the Sergeant at Arms on that front. And finally, a good treasurer and a good club will, on a biannual basis, present to the club members a report of how the committee has spent their dues. So they've contributed £57 for a 6-month period, and they want to know how we've spent that money. Are we using that money responsibly? The reporting that we do for our club members is stored in that folder. So again, I won't want to go into that at the time being. Just want to let you know that that's where it goes, and that that's a discipline that we should continue on to be a really good club. The final thing I'll mention is that at the end of a Toastmasters year, 1 month before there's going to be a handover between the last committee and the new committee, a audit committee should be selected who isn't a part of the existing committee, and they should go and trawl through our financials to make sure that we have undertaken the financials in a robust, accurate and honest way for the benefit of the club. So make sure that you maintain really good, clear records, because this audit at the end of the year is going to happen, and so you need to have good records and you need to justify everything that you've done as a treasurer over the course of the year, both on behalf of the committee but also on behalf of yourself. You are ultimately the person responsible for that side of things. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for now. That's video 1, just an outline of all the things that you need to do. In the next video I will actually walk you through the month-end process. Alright, hope that's been useful. I hope I wasn't too long-winded, and I will hopefully see you, if I haven't bored you stiff, on the next video. See you later.